The story begins on a deserted, muddy beach in a post-apocalyptic world. Scattered tree trunks litter the shore, and a young boy lies belly down on the ground. Shortly after, a curious dog approaches, sniffing around the logs. Upon noticing the boy's presence, the dog barks and lunges at him. A fierce struggle ensues, but the boy eventually manages to kill the dog with his knife. He then carries its corpse onto his boat and sets off towards home. Back at his home, his father is writing something in his notebook. He looks older than he is, with his shabby clothes and gray beard. Their house is raised above the lake, and all transportation is done via boats. Along with a few others, they live in a community by the lake, protected from all sides by gates and metal fences. The son returns with the lifeless body of the dog. His father dismissively checks the carcass and inquires about the events. The son answers that he killed the dog himself. Hearing this, the father immediately asks if he crossed the dam, but the son admits he couldn't get past the witch. As the two delve deeper in conversation, Dad points out that the blade is rusty, so the dog's meat is no longer suitable for bartering. However, they manage to salvage its coat. The duo then travels to a man named Aringo to see what they can trade the coat for. Boats are the primary sources of transport here, as most houses are built right on the bank. The river is highly polluted and looks almost black. Upon arriving at Aringo's home, they call him out to barter the dog coat with. After bickering for a while, Aringo only welcomes their father inside. He is an old man who doesn't enjoy company and always carries a rifle. Unnoticed, the boy goes around the entrance and eavesdrops on their conversation. Aringo questions the father on where he got the dog coat, suspecting it belongs to his lost pet. The father lies that he found a dead dog in the nearby fields. Furious, Aringo refuses to trade, as he is sure this is his own dog. However, after hearing the father plead for food, he gives him fish and 2 grenades for hunting. Just as the two walk outside, the boy sneaks in and steals Aringo's remaining grenades. On their way home, the father reminds him they cannot afford enmity with the old man. Later, the boy tosses 2 grenades into the river to catch fish, but instead finds floating dead bodies. Turns out it's a custom here to throw dead bodies into the water. Spooked by this horrifying scene, he rushes back home. At night, the boy prepares for dinner while his father writes in his diary. Reading and writing are luxuries from the long-forgotten past, and only the old know about it. Curious about this activity that his father does regularly, the boy sneaks in and watches. However, the old man scolds him and tells him to mind his duty. Shortly after, when he goes out to get some vegetables, we see more of this bleak, desolate world. Apparently, a mysterious plague has wiped out most people, and life is extremely difficult for the few survivors. The land barely yields any crop, and the resources are limited. While looking for vegetables, he constantly coughs and looks frail. The following afternoon, Aringo barges into their home, furious about the stolen grenades and the dead dog. He accuses the father and son, and even goes as far as pointing a gun at the father. When the boy tries to intervene, he is slapped across the face. Aringo then takes back the stolen grenades and storms away from there. That night, the father leaves on his boat for Valeria Golino's house. She is a blind woman who controls the dam and everything that goes in and out of the lake community. Since she controls the water flow, cooks her food, and does herbal medicine, his father calls her the witch. After some passionate lovemaking, they sit down and talk. The man says it's getting harder for him to hunt and find food. The woman keeps things from the past like cookie jars, mugs, and pots. On the other hand, the man is more rigid and says there's no point in thinking about the past. He tells her about the dog that his son killed. For the boy, rats and dogs are just food, unlike those who remember when dogs were loving pets. The man has raised his son like a wild animal without teaching him anything because that's the only way to survive here. In response, the woman reveals that his son comes to her house sometimes when he scolds him. She urges him to show more physical affection towards him. However, the man replies that it would be better if the boy died quickly. Appalled at this suggestion, the witch slaps him. On his way back, the old man has an intense cough episode. After struggling for a few minutes, he somehow manages to start the boat and drags himself to his home. There, he finds his son sleeping peacefully and realizes that this cough will soon kill him. So he sits down on his study table to write something in his notebook. Hours later, the boy wakes up and is delighted that his net has caught a fish. But he finds that his father is still asleep on his study table. Hours pass and the evening approaches, but the man still doesn't wake up. Unable to process what's happening, the boy curiously takes his father's notebook and tries to see what's inside. For him, all the words are some weird symbols that he can't understand. The next morning, after realizing that his dad is no more, he ties up his corpse and casts it into the river. He now wants to know what is written in the notebook, and the first person he goes to is Aringo. However, the latter once again acts rude and selfish. When he keeps on shouting, the boy remembers how Aringo humiliated his father. In a fit of rage, he hangs him upside down and drowns him to death. With Aringo's jacket, ropes, gun, and a new dagger in his possession, the boy heads towards the witch's home. He calls her and offers to trade for food. The witch asks about his father's whereabouts, and the boy bluntly reveals that he is dead. Hearing this, the old woman is devastated, and she starts crying. After a while, the boy brings out his father's notebook and asks what it is. The witch explains that it's a tool for storing memories. She adds that memories are things from the past that you don't want to forget. Intrigued by the notion of memories, something entirely foreign to him, the boy's curiosity intensifies. She struggles to make him understand that she knows how to read, but cannot do so right now because she's blind. The following morning, the boy decides to cross the dam and search for someone who can read the notebook for him. Initially, the witch refuses to give him permission, saying his father never wanted him to go out. However, the boy is too obsessed with memories and the vast knowledge the notebook has. So, the witch lets him cross the dam with one warning: never trust anyone out there. Immediately afterward, the boy is greeted by grim scenes of dead bodies hanging by tree branches. After a while, he ties his boat to a tree trunk and starts exploring. He sees long lines of abandoned cars that were probably stuck in a jam when the plague hit. He has never seen a car before, but decides to sleep inside one of them for the night. The following day, he discovers his boat has vanished. After a brief search, he encounters two farmers, Matteo and Lorenzo, working in their vegetable garden. They reassure him that his boat is safe and docked at a nearby moor. The boy, driven by hunger, lowers his gun and accepts their invitation to join them for dinner. The farmers advise him to use a spoon while eating to minimize the risk of spreading diseases. After dinner, the boy requests that Lorenzo read his father's notebook. The latter agrees, but says that he'll do it the next day. Before going to bed, Matteo takes him to see something. The farmer duo has captured a young girl kept inside a cage and leashed her like a dog. Matteo pokes her with a stick and forces her to eat the vegetables. While the boy is confused seeing all this, Matteo explains that this girl is for trade with his friends. The following day, the farmers tell the boy that he must work if he wants them to read the diary. Matteo makes the boy plow the field and then asks him to clean the girl's cage. While doing so, the girl begs him to let her go. She says her name is Maria, and the two farmers were friendly towards her before throwing her in a cage. However, despite her pleas, the boy refuses because he's desperate for Lorenzo to read the diary to him. That evening, the boy, Matteo, and Lorenzo gather around to read the diary. The first 2 pages recount the events of the boy's birth. They reveal that his mother passed away during childbirth, and his father had no idea how to take care of him. He even wished the boy would die right away. Just when the story starts to get interesting, Lorenzo says he'll continue reading the following day. This makes the boy angry, but he's quickly reminded that he must abide by the house rules and work during the day in exchange for the evening diary readings. The following day, the boy goes to Maria's cage and asks if she can read the notebook. She lies that her father can, and if he frees her, she will take him there. Hearing this, the boy promptly frees her, gives her a jacket, and marches outside. He then starts tussling with the farmers. At one point, he gains the upper hand and stabs Lorenzo. Matteo tries to choke him, but Maria saves him in the nick of time. She stabs the farmer in the back of his head, immediately killing him. After the incident, the two kids leave on a boat. As they engage in conversation, Maria admits that she isn't sure if her father can read. This angers the boy, and he yells at her for lying to him. In the next scene, they arrive at Maria's home to discover a grim sight. There is nothing except the hanging body of her father in the home. Distraught, they burn the whole place down so that the dead body cannot spread any diseases. The boy then asks her to join him on his journey since she has nowhere to go now. She asks for his name, but he reveals that his father never named him and simply called him son. Following this, the duo wanders down the river in search of someone who can read. As they venture inside the forest, they are suddenly attacked by a masked man with a rifle. After tying up the kids, he takes them to an industrial complex. There, he presents them in front of an intimidating-looking man. The man looks cleaner than everyone else with his fur coat, braided hair, and beard. He is revealed to be the boss of this complex. On his order, the masked man takes the boy to a cage while the girl is left behind. But before he leaves, the boy shows him his notebook. He wants him to read it for him. Later that night, we see the man in his room reading the notebook. He is revealed to be the executioner, as he does all the killings for his boss. Half of his nose is cut off, and it has left a ghastly bruise behind. As he goes through the pages, he is left in utter shock. Just then, the door bursts open and the boss enters the room. He orders the man to put on his mask, unable to stomach the sight of his disfigured face. He then mentions that the boy must be killed tomorrow, as they cannot afford to keep slaves. However, the executioner hesitates as the boy reminds him of his son. It's revealed that when the plague hit, he had to kill his own son, as he believed that a swift death would save him from this hellish life. Unfortunately, his boss, who is devoid of empathy, dismisses his sentimental attachment. He declares that this unforgiving world has no place for such emotions. The boss then orders the executioner to kneel and asks him what heals the pain of the past. The masked man answers that only more pain can heal the pain of the past, as his boss cuts the tip of his ear. He then conclusively orders that the boy must be killed tomorrow. The next day, the executioner comes to the cage with a rifle. He stares at the boy for a long time, then sits by the door. He takes out the notebook and starts reading aloud from the recent pages. These were written on the very day the old man died. The father writes about how his chest hurts and he coughs up blood. He knows he won't live much longer and admits he loved his son deeply, even if he never showed it. These words move both the boy and the executioner. The father writes that the best day of his life was when his 4-year-old son hugged him. He knows that if his son can live long enough to read his diary, all his sacrifices will have been worth it. The last pages of the diary urge the son to love, because love makes us invincible. When the diary ends, the executioner opens the door and, without saying a word, leaves with his gun. Surprised, the boy gathers his wits together and runs outside searching for Maria. Along the way, he sees the dead bodies of the residents scattered all over. It turns out the executioner has killed everyone and is making his way to the boss. Upon coming face to face with the evil man, he says he has forgiven himself for everything and will no longer repent. When the boss comes closer, he stabs him with his knife and kills him. After this, he takes his own life. In the final scene, Maria and the boy escape from the complex. The boy knows that his father loved him, and now he can live the rest of his days peacefully. The movie ends as the two hug each other affectionately.